Good morning, guys. So today is Tuesday, and we're going to be talking about poetry for the entire month of April. Guys, I'm trying to do something fun instead of doing like a literary essay or something else. It'll just be a fun month of poetry. So the first thing I want to do today is just go over what is poetry. So it's just an introduction, and it's this wonderful slide presentation I found from a woman named Deb Hansen. So let's go through what this is. All right. So I'd like to introduce you to Mr. and Mrs. Stanza. Mrs. and Mr. This teaching team is going to teach us all about poetry. Excited, right? I know I am. So Mrs. Stanza is going to begin by teaching us the basics of poetry, and that's what we really need to understand first. Later, Mr. Stanza will lead us in writing our own poetry. And we write our own poetry, boys and girls. You're going to be doing it online. I'll create a document for you for each type of poem. It's kind of cool. We'll have fun. Trust me. All right, poetry. A definition, what is it? Well, let's begin by defining poetry. Well, poetry is a type of artistic writing that attempts to stir a reader's thoughts or their emotions. And I want you to stop and think about that. When you're writing poetry, you want the reader to have a thought or have an emotion. And this can be done easily with poetry. All right, so poetry structure. Well, poetry contains a unique structure. Poetry is divided into stanzas. Now, you should remember that from last year, but if not, we're going to talk about it. So, a stanza is a group set of writing in a poem. It is set apart from others with a line of spaces. What else do you guys know about lines of spaces? So here's a stanza. Okay, here's your space right here. Okay, and this poem is Some People. Isn't it strange some people make you feel so tired inside? Your thoughts begin to shrivel up like leaves all brown and dried. That's one stanza. Here's our space. Second stanza, but when you're with some other ones, it's a stranger still to find your thoughts as thick as fireflies, all shiny in your mind. And that poem was written by Rachel Field. All right, let's go to the next one. So Mr. Stanza just made a connection. Think about regular writing, your essays, your stories, your novels. They're divided into paragraphs, but poems are divided into stanzas. That's the big difference. All right, still on poetry structure. A refrain is a line or a phrase that is repeated in a poem. A refrain usually happens at the end of a stanza. All right, so let's take a look at this. And we're going to see the refrain here, okay? Stopping by woods on a snowy evening. The woods are lovely, dark and deep, but I have promises to keep. And miles to go before I sleep, and miles to go before I sleep. This author is Robert Frost. And these two lines here, it's a refrain because this one repeats that one. And please note, not all poems contain a refrain, so don't start freaking out on me. Still on structure. Sound confusing? Okay, just think about the words and their roots. Some common poetry structures include couplets, quatrains, and octaves. And you're thinking, what? Don't worry about it. It's all fun. Couplet sounds just like a couple, as in the couple held hands as they walked down the street. So a couple refers to two people. So if we take that word couple and we put it as a couplet, it's a pair of two lines in a poem where the ending words in each line rhyme. A quatrain reminds me of quarter. I know a quarter is divided into 4 equal parts, like 4 quarters in a dollar, or 4 quarters in a basketball game. Oh yeah, the root quad means 4. So a quatrain is a poem or stanza that contains 4 lines that rhyme in some manner. Okay, we'll talk more about that in a little bit. An octave is a poem or stanza that contains 8 lines that often rhyme. Again, I think octave starts like an octopus and octagon, and we know an octopus has 8 arms, octagon has 8 sides. So the root oct means 8, and so that's why octave in a poem contains 8 lines that often rhyme. Okay, so let's look at the structure. So the first one on the left is an octave, and again, we know it's 8 lines. It's called I Shall Not Pass This Way Again. Through this toilsome world at last, once and only once I pass. If a kindness I may show, if a good deed I may do, to a suffering fellow man, let me do it while I can. No delay, for it is plain, I shall not pass the way again. And that's an anonymous. And you can go through and think of all the words that rhyme here. All right, a quatrain called hiding. I'm hiding, and no one knows where, for all they can see is my toes in my hair. And I just heard my father say to my mother, but darling, he must be somewhere or other. Okay, so if we go back to octave, that's 8 lines. And here each stanza has 4 lines. And again, if you look, you can see some rhyming patterns. And we'll talk more about that later. Okay, so this is trees. So, I think that I shall never see a poem lovely as a tree whose hungry mouth is pressed against the earth's sweet flowing breast. A tree that looks at God all day and lifts her leafy arms to pray. A tree that may in summer wear a nest of robins in her hair. Upon whose bosom snow has lain, who intimately lives with rain. Poems are made by fools like me, but only God can make a tree. And this poem is written by Joyce Kilmer, and this is what we consider a couplet because each stanza has 2 lines, okay? Some of the lines rhyme like see, tree, day, pray, okay? Not all of them. Okay, so that's going to be the end of day 1. I'm not going to have you do anything writing. I just want to go over some of the terms that we're going to be seeing. All right, guys, that was an easy day, right? All right, take care.